Good morning, day 13. Unlucky for some, certainly is here in COVID Britain. However, today what we're going to look at is very much my speciality, is actually assessing children for sound processing. And we're going to look to begin with at the under sevens. This also applies to children who are over 7 and adults who've got profound learning difficulties, who you can't formally assess at all. So remember, sound is our first sense. It's our first myelinated sense. It's fundamental to all learning. It triggers other senses. So that other senses not working is a good indication we might have a problem with sound. With small children, all you can do is observe, and I would strongly recommend videoing. Lots and lots of video, because you forget, and they make incremental changes as we go through the process, and you want to remember, because you're going to work hard to change them if there's really serious issues, and it's exciting. And the other thing I'd suggest to you is you have very high aspirations, that you go back and look at videos of children in the 1960s and you hear good, clear speech, that you listen to videos of children at the top choral schools, hear them speaking, hear them singing. That is the level of sound processing that every child in the country ought to have. And as I said before, we're nowhere near there. So, issues to look out for, big time. Inner ear infection is always top of my list. And I've got you a splendid picture here of a duck I stole from a client. And, it's very useful to have these things, but many, many homes, you look inside the bath toys and what you've got is black mold. Black mold grows very, very easily in damp climates, in damp environments, and it is dreadful for children's inner ears. It's very easy to keep reinfecting them. So it's incredibly important that all their toys, etc., are very clean, but also that we are keeping an eye out for inner ear infection generally. They get it ever so easily. To check with the child, you're just simply tugging on their ear, tug on their ear. If they pull away, it's because it's painful in there. And I've had clients where the child hasn't gone to an ENT clinic, been told they can't assess them because the child's behaviour is too bad. But actually, it's the child is in so much pain that they can't deal with the inner ear infection. Parents have eventually paid for a private assessment and then had a proper scan, and they've been able to see horrendous inner ear infection. Inner ear infection is really hard to see. We haven't got X-ray vision. Look out for poor language development, and particularly if there's a sudden drop in language, which children can go back. And some of my clients are very good. They've kept videos throughout, and it's possible to see suddenly there's been a drop. The child is no longer processing sound as well as they were before. Look for global developmental delay, because if your sound isn't working, then you're not going to be looking around because nothing's triggering your senses. Look for leaning off to one side. Some children, it doesn't matter what you do, you can't get them upright. And it's because one side's got infection and not the other. Premature children, those last few weeks in vitro do a lot for sound processing development. They've missed it. Therefore, it's worth doing things to agitate their sound processing systems. Genetic issues, same thing. They're missing one Lego brick in the makeup of things. All you have to do is go through all my videos, checking every single bit of motor skills, sound and vision is in place, and you can get them up. And what happens when you get much better postural control, when you get much better sound processing, is posture changes, the inner ear drains, habitual problems that people's genetic issues suffer from stop. So I personally would treat every single human the same. Doesn't matter which bit you're missing. What matters is we get every single bit of development in place. Hearing impaired, I'm working with hearing impaired people all the time. They have been told they're deaf, but in fact, sound processing technology definitely improves vestibular integration. It's definitely improving their sense of where they are. They're getting a lot out of the bone conduction. And some of them, we get a dramatic shift in speech. So it's worth, thinking everybody's got to have every system stimulated. Have a look at your child outside, because outside you haven't got reverberation. Look at how they behave inside when you've got reverberation from walls. Be aware their sound processing can be different in different environments. I think that's particularly true of when you've got really crowded nurseries and they're always indoors. Children, hands on ears, they are telling you there is a problem. There are points at which sound is just painful and something needs to change. Do not put on ear defenders. That stops the stimulation of the sound processing in the ears. You've got to develop the sound processing. Think about background noises in homes and in schools. So really have a good look at sound processing in the homes. Do things like turning off televisions. I have been into people's homes and I have turned off televisions in every single room. And lo, within 15 minutes, there is a miracle. The child starts to speak. The background noise in modern homes from televisions, from computer games, sometimes Christmas lights and other musical things tingling away, and general noise is incredible. You think the home I grew up in the 1960s, we had the home service and it spoke clearly and was only turned on to listen to the news or whatever a bit. It wasn't on habitually. Our homes are much, much noisier now than they were in the past. That impacts on children's ability to develop sound processing skills. Mould in the home and nursery I've spoken about. Earbuds, earphones. Children are on headphones for very long hours, playing computer games. What no one's telling you is that's creating a really nice warm environment for mould. So get air to the ears. Think about retained primitive reflexes. Make sure there's no locking up of this area. Make sure there's good postural control because that enables the eustachian tube to drain properly. So when you're looking at a child, you're looking at a lot of things. And often this is in a situation where they're just playing and you're having a good look at what's going on. You're asking questions to the parents. Children need to master sounds, and they do master sounds of their language, and they do it in a very specific order. So this is the English language. And when you hear them speak, and as they develop speech, you should be able to tick off which sounds they are hearing. You should be able to listen to someone speak and think, oh, they're missing that sound. So I was listening to a government minister the other night, and I was thinking, oh, they're missing these sounds. Therefore, they must have had sound processing problems. They've got sound processing problems. They're missing little bits of speech all the time. It's important because you don't want to miss little bits of every single word. So we need everybody to get to the point where they've mastered every single sound in the language and they can process it, not just say it, they've got to be able to process it. And children who've had good speech and language therapy can often say sounds they can't process. And that is not sound processing, that is just mimicking the movements necessary to make the sounds. Some other simple things you can do is you could ask the children to do, say, 3 tasks for you. I might start with 1 if I was you, but you're going to say, can you put the cup on the table, the pen on the chair, and the toy behind the door? You're not going to go, can you put the cup on the table, the pen on the chair, and the toy behind? Because if you do all the actions and you point, you are not isolating their sound processing. You've got to be deadpan. Some people even have to cover their faces because the children can lip read. You are trying to work out, and it is hard, whether they can make sense of sound and then carry out 3 activities. Experience in schools tells me that many of our children can't, and you think they can because they can just about get by, but actually they're having tremendous difficulty following instructions. If they're having difficulty following instructions one-on-one, in a classroom they're lost. Teach the child a simple rhyme and just listen. How easily are they picking it up? Which sounds are they struggling with? And start with nursery rhymes, because those are pitched at a child's sound range. So bar, bar, black sheep, have you any wool? The child ought to be able easily by 3 to mimic that. Play with musical instruments. So when children come to see me to be assessed, we're not sitting down doing anything very exciting. I am watching their speech, their language, and I get out all the toys. I'm interested. How do they play with music? Which pitches of sound do they like? So some children really like very, very high pitch sounds, and others really like deep sounds. And that's giving me a rough idea as a sound therapist. Which sound range are they able to process? Which are they not? Are they able to process any sounds? Because those children that don't engage with the musical instruments are getting very little. Most children, they like something in the music. They want to play because they can make noise. And in fact, parents usually complain by the end of the session because they're irritated by it. But you are able to see, yes, this child can engage with sound. If they can engage with sound, there is sound processing going on. We need to get it better. Want to have a bit of a look at a case study, revise the vestibular system in the inner ear, this global development. So we're thinking about motor skills with sound and orientation and postural control. We're talking about vision, how's that going? We're looking at whether they can use their facial muscles or whether they're completely expressionless. And we're looking at what's happening with sound and how they produce language. So this is one of my colleagues, clients, and project we ran in Southwark schools. Child had terrible posture, terrible speech, and wasn't working very well in school. In a minute, we'll see what he could produce at the beginning. And of course, the posture. What happens with the inner ear is with poor posture, fluid builds up, so the situation doesn't get better. When you improve the inner ear, the postural control is better, the eustachian tube flows better. And you can see physically the child looks more alert, is more present. Children I started working with in December, I am seeing images of them looking much better now in January. You should be seeing those sorts of shifts in the posture. And we're working with this client with motor skills and sound therapy. If you look at what we started with, the child was scribbling. This is the beginning of a 3-month process. And he was obsessed by Sonic the Hedgehog, desperate to draw. But if you look carefully, you see one side of the drawing is very different from the other. Literally eye, brain, everything, left and right, and not integrating. 3 months later, after work with sound therapy and with motor skills, we've got a completely different child whose perception of the world is so much more accurate, and of course feels so much happier because the sensory system's working. So checking a child's sound processing on a timely basis, and not just going, oh yeah, it's okay, but actually getting it to a very high standard is a really good investment for life. And in my experience, it's only Tomatis sound therapy that makes really big shifts where you can think, wow, that's impressive. And tomorrow I will take you through children over 7, where you'll see these massive shifts. And you think, goodness, how could somebody have coped before? And yes, I can now see why learning is so much easier. There is equipment out there that is useful. I think it's worth thinking about at this stage, though I will talk about it in more detail later on. There is a nice bit of equipment, which is a bone conducting unit, which you can work with a therapist. You can put it on the base of the child's spine, and you can start working with very small children 10 minutes a day. slowly building up their vestibular integration, slowly building up their sound processing. And certainly on the continent, I know they're using it in hospitals, they're using it with premature babies. It's very effective. We've been using it with very small children with profound difficulties, and it's had super results. Very pleased with it. Then also the headphones. You can use headphones, you can buy them now, and they have pre-recorded music. So you can start doing sound therapy with somebody and they come with a microphone, so you can create an audio vocal loop. Again, that improves speech, language, and so on. If a child has got really serious problems, we need to work with them with specialized programs. But to be honest, there's a lot you can do for your average child that can massively shift them at really quite an affordable price. So my contact details, should you wish to get in touch, and the details of how to get hold of sound processing equipment. Thank you for listening, and I shall see you tomorrow.